This is Jane Muncy again, and I'm going to tell Rawhead and Bloodybones. Once upon a time, there was a woman, and she'd married a man that had a daughter, and she had a daughter. Her daughter was real ugly, hateful, and everything that she shouldn't have been, and his daughter was real beautiful, sweet, kind, and nice, and everyone loved her. But everyone hated the other woman's daughter, and she was jealous. So she went to a witch, a friend witch of hers, and asked her what to do to get rid of this real pretty girl. So she said, I have an idea. Said, you tell your daughter to get in the bed and tell her and tell the other girl that your daughter won't live unless that she goes after a bottle of water for her. So she said, well, then what should I do? Said, then just give her some little old food and I'll take care of the rest of it. But the woman says, I'm not pleased. Says, I want to know what you're going to do. She said, well, said, I'm going to have a gang of horses run over, and says, if she gets by that some way, I'll have a gate that every time it pinches its poisonous fangs will kill her. She said, well, said, all right. So she went back home, and she told her daughter that when her stepdaughter came in from working out getting water, that for her to lay down on the bed and pretend like she was sick. So she did, and she laid down and began to groan. She says, oh, I don't think I'll live. But the other daughter came in, and she says, what's the matter? And she says, nothing can help me except that you go to the end of the world to get me a bottle of water. She said, well, then I'll do that, because she was kind and good, and she wanted to help everybody. So she got a bottle and got some cornbread and some water and started out. She sat down to eat her lunch, and there was an old gray-bearded man came up. He had real long beard and was real short and looked like an elf almost. And she says, what do you want, sir? And he said, I'd like to eat dinner with you. And she said, all right. So she divided her food with him. He said, thank you for your kindness and for being so good to me. I'll give you the stick. And said, when you go a little piece longer, said, you'll meet a gang of horses, and you shake this stick at them and say, down, horses, down, and they won't bother you. She said, all right. So she came a little ways longer, and she saw a gang of horses, and they were coming at her, and she shook the stick, and she said, down, horses, down. They disappeared. But she sat down to eat her supper. It was dark, and this old gray-bearded man came up again, and she said, well, what, do you want some dinner this time? And he said, yes. So she gave him some, and he says, now, says, use that same stick you've got to the gate. Said, you'll come to a gate by the well at the end of the water, and said, when you do, you shake your stick at that gate and say, don't pinch me, and it won't pinch you. So she went on, and she came to this gate, and she says, don't pinch me, gate, and it didn't pinch her. She went on through, and she let her bucket, or it was an open mouth bottle, more like, and let it down into the well, and she drew up something, and it looked like a skull, and it was bloody and had bones on it. It was the Rawhead and Bloodybones. And she said, what do you want? It said, I want you to wash me and dry me and lay me down easy. So she washed it and dried it and laid it down easy. And she drew up another one, and another one, and another one, and a fourth one. And they all wanted her to wash them and dry them and lay them down easy. And not only did she do that, but she laid them down in the sun where they could take a sun bath. So after she got her water and started home. And after she got out the gate, the first Rawhead and Bloodybones says, she's pretty, and said, I wish she'd be twice as pretty when she got home. And the other one said, well, she smelled good, and I wish she'd smell twice as good when she got home. And the other said, well, said, she was kind and good and sweet, and everybody loved her, and I wish everybody loved her twice as much when she got home. And the other one said, well, said, I wish when she got home that when first time she combed her hair, that a whole lot of gold would fall out. And so when she came through the streets in her own town, everybody smelled something so good, and they thought that a florist shop must be moving in or something, because everything was smelling so good. And they looked out the window, and there she came down the street, and they couldn't hardly look at her. She was so pretty, and the kindness just glowed out all over her. When she got home, her stepmother was surprised to see her, very much surprised. And she said, what are you doing home? She said, well, I brought this water, and she brought the water and gave it to the girl. And she drank it and got up and started running around. And she said, I'm glad it made you well, little sister. She said, oh, go off and shut up. And then her mother says, I'm surprised to see you back. Said, I wish you hadn't come back. You just bring hatefulness into this house every time you come. And she said, well, my head feels like it's itching. Said, will you please let me comb it in your lap? She said, no, I wouldn't let you comb your head in my lap. What do you think I am, a garbage pail or something? And she said, well, then I'll comb it in my own lap. And she went off in the corner and began to comb her hair. And when she combed it, gold fell out. And her stepmother said, oh, honey, come here. I'll let you comb your head in my lap. And she said, no, said, I don't want you to now. I can comb it by myself. So she combed all the gold out, and the stepmother was real angry. The witch thought that her daughter could go just as soon as her stepdaughter could. So she sent her daughter off with a big, fine meal and everything, and she came to this tree where this other girl would sit down and ate her lunch, and this man poked his head around the tree and said, may I eat lunch with you? And she said, no, I don't want your dirty beard dragging in my good food. Said, you just go off and hush up. I don't even let you eat with me. And he said, well, all right. So she came to these horses, and these horses tromped and tromped on her. She was tough and didn't hurt her much, but they weren't going to hit her as hard as they were that other girl, though. So she went on by, and she came to this gate, and it pinched her and hurt her. It wasn't poison then, though. And she came on in, and she saw Rawhead and Bloodybones, and she drew them up, and the first one she drew up, it said, wash me, dry me, and lay me down here. She said, what do you think I am, your maidservant? I ain't going to do nothing to you. I don't want to put my hands on you. Get out of my water bucket. And it said, all right, and it crawled off in the sun. And the next, she drew up another one. She said, I told you to get out of my water bucket and hush. I don't like you. Go off like the other one did. And so it did, and another one. She talked sassy, talked to him, was mean to him, and she got her water and started home. And after she got through the gate, the first Rawhead and Bloodybones says she was ugly, and I wish when she got home she'd be twice as ugly. And the other said, well, she smelt bad, and I wish when she got home she'd smell twice as bad. And the other said, well, she was mean and hateful, and you can tell that she didn't get along good in this world. I hope she gets along twice as bad. And the other one said, well, I hope when she gets home that snakes and frogs fall out of her hair. And she said, so she got on home, and she was going through the street with a bottle of water, and everybody smelled something terrible. And they opened up the window, and there was a horrible-looking monster walking through the street, and she just had meanness glowing out all over, and she looked like something from somewhere else that wasn't in this world. And she got home, and her mother says, gee, says, you've changed a lot since I saw you last. Said you look prettier than you were. She said, come here and let me comb your hair. And she started combing her hair, and all the snakes and frogs and everything that was in the country started coming out of her hair. And they all came out and ran her and her stepdaughter off. And her and her daughter off, and her stepdaughter lived happy ever after there with her money.